The Midwest supporting, bruiser loving, positivity spreading, world's most dangerous podcast. Join former pro wrestler and promoter Dave Dynasty as he supports and promotes Midwest pro wrestling. Keep on growing with the Midwest Express. This is the Dave Dynasty Show.
Greetings and welcome to the Dave Dynasty Show. This is your host, Dave Dynasty. Thank you for joining us. However you do, whether it be iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, or any of the other podcast platforms, we're glad you're here. We're glad you're with us. We're glad you are here to support and celebrate Midwest professional wrestling. We have a great show for you. Lots packed into the show, as we try to do every week. But before we do that, before we dive into some of our usual things, and before we dive into the world of Midwest professional wrestling, let's talk about something that's bigger than wrestling, and something that right now is a very much a hot button topic, particularly for me. Something that I have very, very, very strong opinions of. So, as a typical Dave Dynasty fashion, when I have strong opinions about something, sometimes my language gets colorful. But even if you have children around, I hope that maybe you'll still let them listen to me here for this next few minutes. Because sometimes you just can't mince words. Sometimes there's only certain ways to say things. So bear with me here. What I want to talk about is bullying. Now, if you've been online at all in the past week or so, you've seen this video from Keaton Jones. He's a young man who's being bullied at school, and it is this gut-wrenching video of him explaining his situation and what's happening to him. But what shines through from this young man is how intelligent he is, and how strong he is, and how brave he is. And you have seen the entire world just rally behind this young man. And I think if you have not seen the video, and I don't see how you have not, if you've gone online at all, please look it up. Please watch it. It is well worth your time. Show it to your children. Show it to your friends. Help spread this message and this thing. Because the fact of the matter is this. Differences and uniqueness is what makes us individuals. It's what makes us people. And that's the wonderful thing about life, is that we're all different and we're all unique. And we should be able to accept and praise and love those differences. Because the fact of the matter is this. I have my own quirks, and I have my own things that I like and what I enjoy, and my habits and my hobbies, so on and so forth. But I do not want nor expect any of you or anybody else in this world to be the same as me, because that's boring, right? That's bullshit boring. As if we were all the same, we would just be a bunch of freaking sheep and robots. So it's time that we realize our uniqueness and our differences is what makes us special. Right? That's what makes us people. And if some little assholes can't understand that differences, then they need to hear it, and they need to hear it bluntly, that it's not okay for them to treat people that way. Because all they're doing is when they do this, and all bullies do, what their actions and their words and everything else, those aren't reflections of their victims. Those are reflections of themselves. It is just showing how weak and insecure that they are. And we together need to rally behind and support these people. And we need to tell these guys, we're not going to take this shit anymore, right? It's everywhere in this world now, right? It is everywhere you turn. It's in social media. It's in mainstream media. It's in entertainment. Everywhere you turn, there is bullying. There is this stereotyping. There is this pigeonholing. There is this being horrible to each other because we're different. Well, why the fuck would we want to not be different? Why would we want to be the same? I mean, individuality is the most amazing thing that we as humans have, right? The fact that we all have the right to our opinions and our tastes and so forth, man, that's what makes life wonderful, right? And I may not like what you like, but I respect you, and you're right to that. And I like hearing other people's likes. I like hearing what makes them special, what makes them unique. And To me, that's the great thing about talking to people and getting to know people, is finding out those things that makes them them. And you know what, Keaton, I know you're not listening to this, right? But Keaton and everybody else like him, because we've all experienced it, right? For the most part, we have all experienced this, and there's a chance that some of you listening right now are experiencing it now. Don't give up, right? Keep fighting. Because the thing is this, stand tall, hold your head up, because this is not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of the bullies. And this is not anything negative on you, it's all negative on the bullies. You have nothing to be ashamed of. And I know it hurts and I know it's difficult, but someday it's all going to be better, right? I had a kid that picked on me, man, when I was in elementary school, right? Because I was into comic books and I was into pro wrestling and I was into all these things. I had acne and all this stuff. And I really didn't give a shit what anybody said or thought. I really didn't fucking care, right? I don't need anybody's approval, never have. But this kid he just gave me a hard time, right? And I wouldn't stand for whatever else. But there's something to be said when you go out and you see that this guy who picked on you and called you names and was such a big shot back in school is really now just a failure in life and has nothing going for him, which is what I discovered about this guy later, right? And I'm not here to judge or pick on him or whatever else, but his decisions and his choices and his behaviors certainly have come full circle and back on him. And that's what happens, all right? Stand strong and just don't take it. There's people out there that will support you and will be your friend. And like me, message me, right? There's 1,000,001 ways to get a hold of me on Facebook, on Twitter. If you need somebody to talk to about this, get a hold of me. So, all right. So I'm going to step off the soapbox there. I just felt that needed to be said. It's a very, 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 hot button thing going on right now, and it's bigger than wrestling. And I just wanted to say my 2 cents on it. But now let's turn our attention to our show today. We have a great show. Our interview today is with the King of Indiana, Billy Rock. If you don't know who Billy Rock is and you call yourself a Midwest Professional fan, you're wrong. Right, you have to know who Billy Rock is. From his career on through the guys he has trained, it's amazing, right? And you're going to hear that. We have almost an hour-long interview with Billy Rock today for you to listen to. It is spectacular. You're going to love it. Share it and let the whole world know about Billy Rock. We're going to kick things off here. Let's talk about. We're going to revisit a classic Midwest wrestling match, and we're going to get everything's themed Billy Rock today, right? We got Billy Rock on with the interview. We got Mance Warner coming up with Warner's Wisdom, who's a Billy Rock trainee. So let's talk about a classic Billy Rock match. You can go to our YouTube channel, go to davedynasty.com, click on the YouTube link, and there's a playlist there on our main page towards the bottom that says Current Shows Videos. And right there you'll see a match from November 6, 2016, where Billy Rock, it's his retirement match, as he faces his very first trainee, Trip Cassidy. This match, you can also look in the show notes here. There's a direct link. You can click on it right there to go right to the match. This match was spectacular. I am huge fans of Billy Rock and Trip Cassidy, and to see these guys, the story, the emotion. There's a pre-match letter from Billy that's read to all of his trainees and everything as he talks about his career. It's just great. It is wonderful. It is emotional. It is something that you will be invested in. So go watch that match. I cannot recommend it enough. For the scene itself, not to mention the fact of Billy Rock and Trip Cassidy, two of the greatest in the Midwest. So go check that out. So it's keeping on that trend, on that flavor of Billy Rock. Now let's look at some classic Midwest wrestling audio. People really like it when we do this. We go back and look at some things. Well, let's look at a Billy Rock promo. This is Billy Rock talking prior to his 2008 match for IPW at IPW Heat Stroke. Defending his junior heavyweight championship against Sami Callihan. So let's hear what Billy's got to say about that and this great promo from 2008.
Before I left, I saw a disturbing post on the message board, which I shouldn't even be reading the message boards, but I did. And somebody wrote that when Sami Callihan beats Billy Rock, IPW will finally have a real junior heavyweight champion. You want to talk about being a real champion? I have faced everybody that has been put in front of me, and I haven't complained once. I have beaten them all, but yet I'm not a real champion. Outside of here, outside of wrestling, I work 7 days a week at a real job. I try to support a $1,000 a month mortgage, but I'm not a real champion. I do this business because I love it. Don't ever say that I don't have enough passion for this business. Tonight, Indianapolis, IPW, you're going to see passion like you've never seen passion before.
There you have it, some classic Midwest audio from the King of Indiana, Billy Rock, who you will hear from. Let's take a quick break, and you will hear from Billy Rock in a spectacular hour-long interview with one of the Midwest's greatest of all time, Billy Rock. Stick around. You've heard him here on the Dave Dynasty Show as a guest and as host of the monthly Graham's Gallery episodes, and now you can hear his stories. You can own a copy of Confessions of a Big-Time Wrestler, the audio book from Dr. Jerry Graham Jr., former multi-tag team champion in WWA and owner of Bruiser Bedlam. You can hear all of his encounters with the various wrestlers, places, and promotions he's worked as he tells about his colorful, long, and illustrious career. You can have your own copy for only $25, and that includes shipping and handling. It's very simple. Go on Facebook, look up Jerry Jaffe, Jaffe, send him a private message, and make arrangements to purchase a copy of Confessions of a Big-Time Wrestler now. You will not regret this purchase.
And welcome back to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am your co-host, Ike Isaacs, and today I am joined with King of Indiana, Billy Rock. How are we doing today?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for having me on the show.
Anything for the King of Indiana. Anything for the King of Indiana. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who have mentioned you and told me stories about you. So it's very amazing to actually be able to talk to you. Let's say that. But we're just going to jump right into it. So standard question. Where are you from, Billy?
I was born and raised in Lafayette, Indiana.
Very nice.
A little small town about a couple hours north of Chicago and about an hour south of Indy.
Very nice. Yeah, so I live in Muncie, so not too far away from you, about 2 hours or so.
Yep.
Right on. So then, growing up in Lafayette, what was your childhood like? Did you play any sports?
Yep, I played baseball, basketball, football. I played as many sports as I possibly could, but I'm only like 5'5", so I was always the small kid on every team. But yeah, I played sports. We lived on basically a farm and a lot of land, so I'm used to living in wide open spaces. And yeah, that was about it. It was a lot of TV and sports.
Absolutely. Nothing else to get the mind going, right? Lots of TV, lots of sports. So then, have you always, obviously, for people who don't know, I would say you're pretty well known in Indiana for wrestling in your wrestling school. So when you're younger, what were your first memories of wrestling? When was it that you first kind of got into it?
So growing up, I did mention I watched a lot of TV, but when I grew up, I only had like 5 channels. So I don't have like the ungodly amount people have now. So one Saturday afternoon, I was flipping through the TV set, and all of a sudden I watched, there was a build-up for WrestleMania. And I recently have finally found the clip on YouTube now, what I remember that got me into wrestling. And basically it was a promo of Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff getting ready for Mr. T and Hulk Hogan. And so they give this promo from Mean Gene, and all of a sudden they walk out of they're basically in like a gym, and they walk outside the gym, and then Paul Orndorff just randomly beats up somebody walking down the street. And I was just like, what is this? Like, I've never seen somebody just randomly just beat somebody up down the street, you know. And then Mean Gene's like, oh, I'm out of here. I can't handle seeing this. And that was my initial introduction to professional wrestling, and I was absolutely hooked ever since. And it literally was just a fluke, me flipping through the channels, and that moment came on.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the best way to get into it, right? Just a random chance, random coincidence. Just say, hey, this is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, I grew up mostly with a lot of the '80s wrestlers, the rock and roll wrestling of the WWF, and then I was lucky. Also, I did watch NWA growing up too when it was on a certain channel. I didn't get PBS, but there was another network of the 5 that I had that through the Rabbit Ears and Snow and whatever, I could see Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors and Rock and Roll Express.
Absolutely. Good old-fashioned Rabbit Ears. Have to adjust those every 5 minutes. Make sure you got good reception.
Yep.
So then was the moment you saw that clip leading up to WrestleMania, was that the moment that you knew you wanted to wrestle?
No, that probably came about a year later. I started really getting hooked with wrestling. Being an '80s kid, obviously Hulk Hogan was a huge influence. It was probably about a year later, because around WrestleMania 2 was when I started saying to myself, this is something I really want to do. And then as I got into high school, when I was in high school, pro wrestling wasn't the coolest. This was just before the Attitude Era. And so I kind of got away from it just a little bit. I paid attention to it a little bit, but not as much as I used to. And then once I got out of high school, I kind of went back to watching it religiously, and then that's when the whole Attitude Era and NWO and ECW all kind of exploded at once.
Absolutely. I mean, arguably one of the best eras of wrestling, I would say.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's definitely a good time to, get that fever and just get that drive. So, obviously, you start out just as you're like, oh yeah, this is really cool. And then you kind of start progressing to where, wrestling starts becoming something that's more tangible in terms of what you want to do. But when did you start training? Because, of course, it was probably a little bit different when you started. You couldn't just, call up a school and be like, hey, can I start training?
Yeah, so just kind of for younger viewers and listeners, to show my age here. So, so when I started, the internet just started. So, the internet kind of was around 94, 95. So, that's when I graduated high school. And so, so it wasn't real popular like it is today. Today, everybody has it, but back then hardly anybody had it. So I remember a few years later after I graduated high school, I actually sent letters to promotions in Indiana, because PWI magazine used to have the encyclopedia of all the wrestling promotions in the United States. So I'd find the ones in Indiana, I'd sent them letters saying, hey, I want to get trained. And at that time I couldn't find anything. I got a few letters back, but for the most part I couldn't get anywhere. And so then finally, there used to be, besides PWI magazine, there used to be a magazine called Wow magazine. And it was more for it started becoming the era of the whole internet, smarting up fans and stuff. It wasn't so much kayfabe, but it was actual gossip and all that, legit gossip news. And there was an ad for Dory Funk's wrestling school. And so I went there, and that's kind of how I got my foot in the door in pro wrestling.
Absolutely. And just a little callback for those that don't know, a letter is something you put in an envelope and you put a stamp on to send in the mail, just in case they didn't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I don't think anybody does that anymore.
And they call it snail mail for a reason, because I remember you send a letter and it would take, 3 weeks to get to its destination. So, but
yep, absolutely.
So then, of course, like you said, you kind of got your foot in the door at that point, started kind of getting the ball rolling with wrestling. So then when did you make your debut? What was your first match?
My first match was February of 2002. And it was myself and the Dangerous Bull Don Basher in Lafayette, Indiana. So after I got done with Dory, I went to his school for, like, his school is only set up, they're like camps, so they're only like a week long. So while I picked up things rather quickly, obviously I don't know it all. So when I came back to Indiana, Basher used to start running shows out of Lafayette, and so that's how I got with him. I started training with him in December of 2001, and then after 2 months with him, I finally made my debut in February 2002.
Absolutely. So I mean, it looks like you pretty much progressed. You progressed pretty quickly. Which is always a good thing. You get that skill going, and eventually you get in the ring. But something always interesting I like to ask people, because of course, I mean, you're probably known pretty well as Billy Rock, but did you ever go under any other monikers or names of any kind?
With Dory Funk, I went just as like my actual shoot name. I wrestled as Wild Bill Logston, and one of the reason why he called me that was just because there used to be a wrestler back in his era named Wild Bill Longson with an N, and I guess like he thought I bumped pretty well, and so he said kind of reminded me of him. I reminded him of him, so that was just it. So I came back here, and Basher was like, why don't you try this? So I went with the Billy Rock name. I mean, when I first started out, I just wanted to wrestle, and so as much as I love, which is crazy, back then when I first started, I was so much about like work rate and just having on great matches, but I didn't really focus on character. And then as I got older, and if you listen to any of my students, one of the things I always say is get a character, find yourself, to me, if you can talk on the mic and have a great character, it's so much better than having a great work rate.
No, and I definitely think, talking to, a handful of people, they've definitely impressed that to us, just over the course of our interviews. So I definitely would agree. I feel like, I think that's something that people lack nowadays, but something that you can find pretty strong in the independent circuits is people that want to work on that character, and they want to develop more than just their physique,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's all important, but you can't let other areas lack to build up others.
Absolutely. And so, like, when I broke in, like I was watching a lot of, like, Dean Malenko and Chris Benoit, two guys that didn't have a whole lot of characters. But then as I got older, then I started, like, showing a lot more appreciation towards the guys that did. Like, I always loved Ric Flair, but then as I got into the business and truly watched some of these guys, the Ric Flairs and the Terry Funks and the Dusty Rhodes and so many others that have great characters, like they just really popped out at me. And there's so many times I think to myself, man, I mean, it's great that I can do like 50 versions of an arm drag, but I so wish I could just captivate an audience with a microphone more than I did.
I mean, that's that's one of those things. I think that's one of those progressions as a wrestling fan. I mean, it's all fun and games with the physicality, like you mentioned, but eventually you got to look at it and you're like, well, these people actually have a character. They're actually putting on a show. But
yep.
But definitely, you definitely had a lot of. I think you have a lot of skill and talent, and you've definitely shown that over the years. And I think one of the ways you've shown that is you've worked pretty much every promotion in the Midwest. But to hit a few, what was it like working for IWA Mid-South, especially the TPI?
So the first time I wrestled, I was very intimidated with IWA Mid-South. So in 2003, I had just gotten done with wrestling a match with Spider Nate Webb in my home promotion in Lafayette. There was a home promotion I used to wrestle for called Central Wrestling Federation. They used to treat me great. It was ran by Sean Cook and Guy Lombardo, and they used to feed me like a lot of the more. They knew I really didn't care about wrestling older wrestlers like Ricky Morton or Brutus Beefcake or something. They knew I wanted younger wrestlers. They knew I wanted to really prove myself with the generation of wrestling. And so they'd feed me these guys. And so one of them was Spider Nate Webb. And him and I had a great match in Lafayette. So like a few months later, IWA had come to Lafayette. And so I'd watched their show, and I literally watched Ian Rotten and somebody else just beat the crap out of these two kids. And I was like, oh, dear God, I don't think I could. I was scared the crap out of me. I mean, they just killed them. So I didn't know if it was just that's how they wrestled or what. I later found out that the kids had done something wrong, and so Ian was just trying to teach them a lesson. But it really bothered me. So I didn't actually try for Ian until about 2005. And finally I had the guts enough. I sent him a tape. He liked it. He liked it so much that he put me in a debut match with Matt Sydal. And his exact words were, if you can't get over in this match, kid, I don't know what else to do for you. So luckily, I had a great match with Matt Sydal. But I will say this, as much as IWA scared me for some of its like death matches and all that, I will say that it was the time, this is when I realized that just how great wrestlers were, performing their art without actually killing their opponent. Like, some of these guys were just so good at making things look so believable. And then that's when I realized this is how pro wrestling should be.
No, absolutely. I definitely agree. And I mean, I would even go as far as say is that, I don't know, man, I've seen some of those things that Ian Ron used to do. Like those, I don't know what they were, but like Taipei death matches and, stapling dollar bills to people's foreheads. Like, man, I wouldn't even want to get near any of that. So, but another one that we
absolutely, absolutely, because I was all new to that stuff. So like when I saw like barbed wire matches and the light tubes and all that, I'm like, what am I doing here? But they did also have great wrestling, and that's what I was there for. So.
No, absolutely. And another thing for people is if you've never seen like a Ted Petty Invitational, that's one of the greatest just exhibitions of talent and character. It's just an amazing event for people who've never seen it, go see it. But another place that I'm assuming that you have, but you've taken part in Ted Petty, haven't you?
Yeah, and I didn't answer your second part of that question, but yeah, that was one of my main goals when I got to IWA was to wrestle for the Ted Petty Invitational. And the first year I was there, I wasn't in the tournament, but the next year, I know Ian had plans for me in 2007. Ian had plans for me to be in it. So I could see the build throughout the whole year. And then finally, the neat thing how I got into TPI was it seemed like a random 4-way match, and then you're told, hey, you're gonna win this match. And one of the opponents, my opponents in that match was Ricochet, who's doing unbelievable things now, Mickey Knuckles, who is one of the most underrated female wrestlers I know, and then OMG, who is a Naptown Dragon. So it appeared to be a random 4-way tag, or a match, match. And then all of a sudden the ring announcer said, and I already know who's going over, which was me, and the ring announcer says, and the winner gets a spot into the TPI. And here I am thinking to myself, oh shit, that's me, So then I win the match and I get into TPI and then I wrestled Mike Quackenbush, and it was like you try to give your best, but then when you get in the TPI, you're like, now I really need to step up. And that's what I tried to do. I ended up getting a concussion in the match, but it was a pretty solid match I had with Mike Quackenbush.
Dang. How did you, if you don't mind me asking, how did you get a concussion?
So he does he does like a running palm strike, kind of like Jushin Liger.
Mm-hmm.
And so he we had a spot plan for him to hit me with it, and then after he hits me with it, he was going to hit me with a brain buster. So he said, "Hey, when I hit you with this move, don't go down. Like stay standing." So he hits me with it, and if you ever watch the video, you'll see he hits me, and my body like turns in a way that it looks like something out of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out when the person falls down. And like it's me trying to stay on my feet, but my body's just not letting me. So you see me just crumble down. And so he goes and grabs me, and I'm not getting up that easily, and he knew something was wrong. So unfortunately, the only thing that sucked about the match, there was about like 2 to 3 more minutes of the match that we had to cut out because he was, and I'm glad he was afraid for my safety. Because in my mind, I'm like, I'm finishing this thing. But, it's weird because my brain like knew what was next, but my body was like in such slow motion on everything there after the palm strike. So, which the crazy thing is, the next day, that's when, so my wife, who's big into voodoo, didn't do anything, by the way, if Mike Quackenbush is hearing this. So the next day at TPI, day 2, Quackenbush in his first match does a tope suicide dive between the middle rope and the top rope, catches his leg, on the top rope and lands on his head. So then he got concussed. So kind of karma happened there, I guess. So
I'm gonna have to look that up later. But dang, jeez, I couldn't even imagine. I've never had a concussion, but I've heard horror stories, and especially when you're in the heat of a match, that's got to be awful.
Yeah, it was, and I'm sure there were times in the match I got knocked loopy and maybe even had partial concussions, but this was just a full on. I was almost knocked out in the match. So,
good lord. But then maybe onto a higher note. You also worked for Chikara. What was that like?
I absolutely loved Chikara, and to this day, I still think in United States, I'm sorry, it's one of the top promotions around. And one reason why I say that, I know some people may say, all the mask characters, it's kind of cartoonish, but to me, you're not going to find any better wrestling, any better entertainment, around. And like the characters that are around my time, were fantastic. The wrestling, it was just unbelievable. The creativity that was coming, and still does out of Chikara. I had some of my, favorite moments wrestling for Chikara.
Absolutely. Then next question is a good question. What's probably your favorite moment from Chikara?
My favorite moment probably was, I'm probably going to go with probably wrestling Chuck Taylor my second night there. It was one of those things where I had my debut match the night before, against Fire Ant, and I felt like the match was kind of just, it was there. Nothing he did, really nothing I did. I don't know. I don't know if I was tired or what. Just for some reason, the storytelling just wasn't there. It wasn't a bad match, but it just wasn't a great debut match. So I know, Chuck and I had wrestled a few times before, and the cool thing was about that match, Chuck could have easily, because he was a regular for Chikara, and this was my first weekend there, and he could have easily said, "Hey, this is going to be my match," but instead I'm like, "Hey, I kind of need to try to get myself over a little bit more with this crowd," and he literally he let me do anything I wanted in that match. So for him to be so unselfish in that was it was pretty awesome, and I was able to finally. I felt like my night 2 was way better than my night 1. And like I said, it was nothing against my opponent. It just was one of those just off nights, and but the night 2 when I wrestled Chuck, it was just everything clicked. I came up with some new ideas for myself. That's also where I kind of developed this idea where I did my fancy chain wrestling. He refused to shake my hand, and through doing fancy chain wrestling, I forced him, basically moving him around like a dance move or something, and forced him into shaking my hand, which was kind of a cool little thing to watch. And it was really good. The crowd was into it, so that's definitely my favorite moment.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think we're gonna hit one more, but I mean, all these places, they're amazing places to work. I've heard a lot of good stories about Chikara, and of course with IW Mid-South, but of course there was one more that we wanted to touch on, a place where you gained quite a bit of attention actually, but it was IPW. So tell us about IPW.
Yeah, absolutely. IPW, which I know I said CWF was my home promotion because it was here in Lafayette, but IPW was definitely my home away from home. So a little backstory on that. So the owner of IPW, he had watched me when I was really green and wrestling for WCWO, and he was like, "Man, I just don't like this kid." So he probably saw me in 2002, 2003. 2005, I finally felt comfortable enough to try to start getting into other places, which one was IPW. And that promoter still remembered me from that green kid like a few years earlier, and he's like, "Nope, not going to use you." And so I tried, and then finally when IWA had used me against Matt Seidel, he was at the show, he saw that, and then he immediately booked me after that. So, just one of the things is, for any young, wrestlers who are listening to this, just don't ever give up. Keep trying, because even though the door slams in your face one time, it doesn't mean it's always going to do that. But anyway, so IPW, my favorite places to wrestle. They really took care of me. Once I got there, I wrestled Irish Airborne, Ohio is for Killers. I wrestled Sami Callihan's. I wrestled Mike Quackenbush's, Ricochet's, Chuck Taylor's. I mean, there was a long Dean Ambrose now, but John Moxley at the time, Jimmy Jacobs. I wrestled a who's who of people for them. And the more and more I keep thinking about Davey Richards, Aaron Williams. I mean, they gave me a lot of opponents. They gave me that were very high quality opponents, and so basically, if it wasn't, I feel like IWA and IPW is definitely, and Chikara are definitely the three places that helped really. It really brought out the best in me. Like I remember, for IWA and IPW, man, I got there, but my creativity and who I was as a wrestler hadn't been developed yet. And through those kinds of places, that really helped, seeing what everybody else does and then trying to come up with my own. It really helped me be very creative, which is a key to success in professional wrestling.
No, absolutely. And actually, the next thing I was going to talk to you about, I mean, speaking of that creativity, and definitely when it comes to developing your character, you have to be pretty creative. But another thing that a lot of people, I think, miss out on is when you look at your wrestling style, you sometimes have to get kind of creative with that too. You sometimes have to mix a couple of different styles to kind of create your own unique asset and skill list. And one of the things was that you were one of the only Indiana guys for a while that worked on more modern hybrid style. You've always had hints of British, Puro, and Lucha in your approach, but how did you develop this approach in that style?
So Good question. So like I told you, I grew up very 1980s type wrestling. And so if you watch my earlier stuff, that really is, I mean, you can definitely see that in my wrestling skill set. But then I realized I wanted to start doing something different. And there was a friend, I became friends with him through wrestling by a guy by the name of Tom Green. He started sending me, he started just giving me free like tapes and later DVDs. But at first it was VHS tapes. So once again, I'm showing my age here. So, and it used to be like like lucha and whatnot. And, that really piqued my interest of like, I really like that. And like the hard part for me was I'm not big. So I had to, like, I can't do power moves. So I had to think of and I'm also like, while I feel like I'm athletic, I'm not like, as I tell my students, I'm not Ricochet athletic. Like I just can't just do some video game type fancy flip or something. I just can't do that, but I can still do some stuff. So, so with those tapes that Tom used to give me, and then somewhere along the line, I found out about Johnny Saint, and I found out about the British style wrestling. And once I started getting my hands on those tapes and watching those videos, I learned really quickly that that was definitely the way I wanted to go. And like the way Johnny Saint wrestled, it was very hypnotic, it was very athletic, and it was something I can do. So, that's kind of where that developed. So I learned that while I may not be the most athletic person, I can definitely maybe make my wrestling a little bit more creative just by doing some simple things. It's simple, but it looks complicated. But so that's where that kind of all came about.
No, absolutely. And I mean, one of the other things about your approach is that, obviously I can't know for sure, but I'm assuming that there was maybe a little bit of pushback, maybe from some of the more seasoned veterans, because obviously I'm not super young, but I'm also not super old. So from my understanding, Indiana has always kind of been behind the curve. So did you get any kind of resistance when you started kind of morphing into this new style?
Yeah, a little bit. I know like there were some, like I would tell, like for as far as the older veterans go, like I remember I was told one time, this is America, this isn't Mexico, so we're not going to be doing lucha tonight. I remember that was told to me once. And I got it. Okay. Not everybody's going to like, I look at it like this. If I wrestled a deathmatch wrestler, the deathmatch wrestler's I'm not going to allow them to stab me with a light tube or something, right? So I get it, So you're not going to take my arm drag. That's cool. That's fine. No big deal. So a little bit, luckily some of the veterans took a liking to me, so they worked with me. But the style that I started developing, and I started it around 2005, even some of the newer wrestlers hadn't really studied up enough to know what I was trying to do. So it took a little bit of time to try to get this in, but finally, I mean, it was accepted, and I felt like I kind of brought that, one of the first for Indiana to kind of bring that style to this state.
No, absolutely. And I mean, also to kind of go along with that, about you kind of bringing that style to the forefront, you were probably wrestling during the period where you probably saw the transition from that old school style of wrestling to a more modern style. So you probably started seeing that transition happen in front of you as you were kind of wrestling in the ring.
Yeah, and you're right. Yeah, I did. Yeah, absolutely. So that was right around So when I started wrestling, that was probably right around when some of the veterans started running shows, but there was a lot of like young upstarts coming in. So there was like the Spider Nate Webbs, there was myself, there was a Drake Younger, there was a Scotty Vortex. So all of us are coming in, and we're all the ones that we saw the 80s wrestling, but then we also saw this like ECW wrestling, and we saw this Rey Mysterio guy, and we're all like, hey, you know what? I kind of like that, and I kind of want to do my own. I want to do that. I don't want to do the, some sort of, I don't want to grab a headlock or something. I'd rather do that fancy arm drag I just saw Psychosis do. I'd rather do that. But the one great thing about, I feel like this generation too, or my generation, is that I kind of learned from both. So while, yes, I wanted to do so much of this creative stuff, I learned so much from like veterans about how to make it make sense, which if you listen to any of my students, they'll tell you the same thing. They'll tell you that that's what I say. You can do all the creative stuff you want, just make it make sense to me. So I really learned how to sell. I learned how to do all that stuff, but I also learned how to incorporate what I wanted to do, and I tried blending it all together. So, and that's how I became the wrestler I became.
No, absolutely. And obviously, you had quite a bit of success with that, so you were obviously doing something right. So now, obviously, you had all this skill, you had all that kind of that technicality and all that. I honestly, the word skill is what best describes it. But you had this skill set, and you had this tree that just kept expanding. But eventually, you also started moving into train wrestlers. Now, from the research I did, when you and your wife had your daughter, you actually cut back on your schedule and started the School of Rock. So tell me about the process that you went through to start training people.
So I never really thought about training people. And then I forget who it was, somebody had said, you can't quit wrestling. You gotta you're pretty knowledgeable. You need to start up a school or something. And I thought they were crazy. But then I was like, I don't even know how to start up a school. You gotta find a building, and you gotta get a ring, and that all kind of costs money. And I wasn't ready to drop, $2,000 to $5,000 on a ring. And, I didn't know about this building thing. So, I was actually, Greg Carey from IPW had told me this idea, and he said, well, why don't you find somebody that already has a ring set up somewhere, and then you just ask them, hey, can I help pay rent while I run my wrestling school? And all of a sudden, the light bulb went off in my head. So there was a wrestling school and ring set up in Lafayette already. So I thought, well, that's not a bad idea. That person would be like, well, you're paying half the rent, and, I'll train my people and you train yours. So, so that's basically what happened. So after I, left wrestling, the first time, it was supposed to be my retirement, but then I came back a few months later or something. At the time, I mainly did it because my dad had, passed away from cancer, and then my daughter was born, and I was just really overwhelmed to where I just really needed to step back. And then I know my wife had really just wanted me to back off from traveling so much because of my daughter. So that's how the first retirement kind of came around. And so in that meantime, between the retirement and me going back, I finally figured out a way to open up the school. And so Brian Roberts from BMF Wrestling Academy, he said, you know what, why don't you pay this much a month? And actually the first year he didn't even charge me, he didn't charge me rent because I only had 2 students. So that wasn't even going to cover the rent. So he let me have it for free. So that was awesome. He's really a big reason why the school even kind of took off. So that was the first year, but the second year then I had more students and I was able to help out with payments and stuff, and then it just kind of took off from there. But yeah, so like the first year, like I guess in my mind I got a little cocky, and so I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to throw it up here on Facebook or MySpace, and yeah, because once again I'm old, so I'm just going to say, hey, I'm going to run a wrestling school, and I'm going to get like 20 students, and I'm going to make a lot of money. And then in reality, I only got 2, and I had to make the best of the situation. So my first class was only like 2 students, and then it grew and bigger and bigger every year. But I always remember that first class.
Absolutely. If you don't mind me asking, who are the first 2 students you had?
One was Trip Cassidy, and then the other one was Jeremy Hadley's. Who's a wrestler. Jeremy Hadley's wife was actually the other student, and she trained to be a manager and a referee. Trip was my only wrestler from that class.
Oh, wow. So then it really did all begin with Trip Cassidy. Because I remember.
Yeah, so like...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I remember talking to him, and he had kind of mentioned that he was kind of the beginning, and I was like, I don't know about that. But he literally was.
Yeah, no. yeah, that's no joke. He was the only one, and it's crazy how this whole thing. I think about like how the school started and where it ended, and getting students to do what they're doing right now. It's pretty fascinating. I remember when the place we were in, the building we were in, we split it with the building was like 2 rooms, and one side was our wrestling school, and the other side was in like an auto mechanics place that fixed up cars. Well, the breaker box for the lights was on their side, and they always locked up their side. So there would be days we'd practice and be not pitch black, but it would be dark. So I had to open up doors just to get enough daylight in for us to train. And so I remember moments like that where it's like, here we are, we're training, there's no light, and I've got to try to teach a 16-year-old kid, and yeah, he's 16, how to try to be a wrestler. And so it's moments like that where you're like, man, is this a good idea or what? And it was always like that for years unfortunately I never had enough money to just build like a performance center or something. I always had to rent out these like really the cheapest places possible that was big enough to hold a ring and have some people in it, or allow people to be in it. And so that's all I could afford. So I had to kind of like take some rough areas of town in order to make that happen. But we made it work.
Hey, you know what they say, you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
Yep.
So then, tell me about how you met Trip, though, because I'm curious about that. How did you meet Trip? Did he come to you? I'm assuming he did.
Yeah, so that's the other part of the story that I kind of forgot to mention. So Greg Carey did give me that idea, but I didn't start it until Trip Cassidy kept messaging me on MySpace, and he's like, Billy Rock, open up a wrestling school so I can train there. And I don't know why he came to me. Like, and if you ever listen to Trip, he'll tell you, he's like, I hated the Billy Rock character. I hated the fact that he smiled when he came to the ring, and I hated his like positive attitude. I hated all that. It was like as a character in wrestling, he's like, I hated it. And so, but yeah, he kept messaging me, and then he also told me, he's like, well, I can get you so many students. And to his credit, he was correct for a while, and then they dropped out, and it was just him. They later came back, but that first year they all dropped out, and I'm like, you guys are killing me. And so, but yeah, that's how it started. Just him messaging me on MySpace like constantly until I finally figured out something I can do.
That's hilarious. And honestly, that sounds like Trip too. But I mean, Trip he's very talented. So, but you've also trained a who's who of Midwest wrestlers. It's pretty hard to go to an indie show and not see someone who you had at some point trained or was a graduate of the School of But let's specifically talk about someone who's kind of not necessarily in the spotlight, but they're kind of in the spotlight right now. Her name is Ruby Riott, formerly known as Heidi Lovelace. Tell us how you feel when you see her on national TV as one of your former students.
I'm swelled up with pride when I see her on TV. There's a picture I keep posting on Twitter. The school, and it's got so I told you about that one building. Well, that was the other thing there. One thing, how it works. So I was in this nice building. Besides the light issue, it was pretty nice. It had decent heat. And well, then they told me that hey, we're kicking you out, and we're going to move you into this other building, because we're going to knock this wall out and make this one large place with car play. So I get moved to this. Literally, it was big enough to hold my 16 by 16 ring, and it gave you about 2 to 4 feet away from the ring. So it's not a whole lot of room away from the ring. So, and it also had just an overhead door. So you just opened up the overhead door, there's the wrestling ring. So I keep posting this picture on Twitter where I have the overhead door open in the middle of winter. And I just got done with a training class, and you can see the snow, and you can see the footprints going to the snow. And so to think that that's where Ruby Riott came from, to now like seeing where she's at, for her, I hope she always remembers those moments so she can fully appreciate like her SmackDown debut and, knock on wood, hopefully her WrestleMania debut when she's wrestling in front of 100,000 people. I kind of hope she's like, yeah, that's where I started, here it is, and have a full appreciation of just everything.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've seen her wrestle in minutes, and I mean, it's always amazing because, you're like, oh, well, they're from Indiana, and oh, they were in this school, and, it's pretty awesome just to have that, because, I mean, I can't imagine what it feels like to actually train someone and see them succeed so much. I mean, that sounds incredible. I mean,
yeah. There was when she wrestled, so when she trained with me, Trip Cassidy's the one, like, you gotta check her out. She's awesome, and she's like, doesn't have hardly any experience at all. Like, literally, like, I think she had just gotten into the ring, some people showed her some moves, and she was able need to go to a legitimate school. So Trip's the one that got her into the school. So she came to the school, and then, so she came, I'm sorry, I got my thoughts all mixed up. So she came to the school, and I remember, like, I would allow her to wrestle, while she trained. So some wrestlers are always like, because she'd already been wrestling. So I was like, nah, just continue to wrestle. Take what you learn here and start applying it to shows, and you'll be better that way. Well, I remember, like, she used to always complain, and I won't mention any names right now, I don't want to do that, but she always would complain about this one wrestler, and that just kept, like, giving her, like, unsafe forearms and whatnot, and kind of hurting her. Like, it wasn't like somebody being snug. I mean, it was just somebody hurting her. And she's like, what do I do? And I'm like, if I was me, I would hit her back kind of the same way. And basically I said, here's the deal. Deal with it now. Get through it, because you are on to bigger and better things. And I remember telling her that once in practice, because she just was so different the way she wrestled that I had not seen, I don't want to say anything bad about female wrestlers, but I never seen a female wrestler like sell and move the way she did. And that always intrigued me, and I definitely noticed it. So I told her that, and then, here she is. She gets into Shimmer, she gets into Shine, she goes to Japan, she wrestles for every single independent wrestling promotion in the United States, and then I was right on that one. So
yikes. I mean, and it's incredible. I mean, it's also, they're, you see all these, or on huge indie shows for that matter, and you see these guys that were peers that you trained, that you traveled with. I mean, and they're just excelling. I mean, it's incredible to see. And I mean, like you said, I mean, it all started with Chip Cassidy, and it's crazy to think that this long road has led here,
Yeah, absolutely. I think about that quite often, actually.
And, and it's like, it's funny because, at the start of the conversation, you're like, yeah, when I first started it, it was just there, I had one student, and then as we've seen the progression, I mean, you just see that, you had the increasing, talent that came through, and then you were right, you churned them back out, and then they became pretty productive members of the wrestling community, I'd like to think. So, definitely big kudos.
Thank you. And actually, we always talk about, and everybody, and we should, we do talk about Ruby Riott, and, I think I had 38 students, and pretty much every single student, they probably could have done some big things in wrestling. It was up to them to get there. So, like, out of the 38 students that I did actually train through the School of Rock, some of them, they quit because they realized, you know what, I want to be a family man, which I get, because I was the same way, because, and who after 3 months, he got done, he completed his training. 3 months later, he had an actual tryout with the WWE. And a few years, and then he kept getting like dark matches with them and not dark matches, but extra type enhancement work with them. And I feel like if he would have stayed, he also would have gotten signed. And then there was another guy named Buck Boulder who stood at 6'7", and he's like more jacked right now than he was when he was with me. And I felt like he also could have probably gotten signed. And then Percy Davis has got like the gift of gab. I keep getting on Percy about getting a little bit bigger, trimming some of that belly fat, because I'm like, man, you have so much charisma. Somebody is going to want. I don't know WWE, but maybe Ring of Honor, TNA, whatever. You've got that potential. Mance Warner's doing his thing, and then Sage Phillips has really come a long way. He's really been impressing me lately. He's been impressing a lot of people lately. I think he's going to eventually go overseas and do some big things. I'm not saying he's told me anything or not. I'm just saying in my mind, that's where I can see him going, and I can see him doing really big things there. But like I said, there's other wrestlers that have they've done some big things, or there's some wrestlers, like I said, they don't wrestle anymore, but they could have been really big in this business.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's just, like I said, it's a shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? But I mean, some of those names are incredible talents. I love Percy Davis. He's an incredible wrestler. Mance Warner, obviously, he freaks me out sometimes, but man, he's a hell of a wrestler.
Yeah. Mance Warner. So he just graduated, and I always, every once in a while, when Mance, remind him about this, because it just blows my mind. So the way my training is, basically I give you 10 months training, and I feel like after months, you should be ready enough to actually start having matches. Now, are you going to have great matches? More than likely, no. You're going to have to walk through it, because there's only so much I can teach you. So I can teach you the moves, but it's a lot different when you're in front of a crowd and you actually have people that you're interacting with. I can't really practice for that, right? So I'm going to teach you the moves. I'm going to teach you to protect yourself. Then you got to kind of do that on your own. There's so much more you're going to learn on the job training, right?
Yeah.
So he has his training. Obviously, I know that there's some things he needs to work on, but he was one of them where it's like, okay, you got to work on some things, but you're going to. So one day, some wrestler that he wrestled posted some video clips of him and Mance. And that guy's trainer, who was like from the Chicago area, and I had never even heard of him, he just started like making fun of Mance. So mind you, literally, Mance just graduated from my school, so this was about a month later this match happened. So Mance is still incredibly green. This trainer is like just ripping on Mance, telling him he's not ready to wrestle, he doesn't belong in the ring, he should he needs to go back to training because he's just not ready. And like it got to the point where I even had to respond on Facebook to this guy because this guy was like, I thought it was just really, really rude. Because what he was complaining about wasn't even that big of a deal. And so, I talked back. I mean, I was nice about it, but I basically said, hey, he just graduated. This is like probably his like fifth match. If from a year from now, if he's still doing this stuff, you have a right to argue, but just give this kid time. And to see him now, the things that he's doing and the matches that he's having and the opponents he's having, and trust me, he sends me some matches from IWA, and I get the pleasure of watching them, and I get the pleasure of watching the fans stand up on their feet when he comes out. It brings me such a sense of pride with that guy also. And once again, just because, some Joe Schmo tells you can't do something, don't listen to him. If you truly believe that this is something you got to do or you want to do, just keep at it, and eventually you're going to get good. So that was just I always bring that up to Mance, and I always think about that every time I see him in the ring with like Homicide or Eddie Kingston or anything he does with IWA. I just remember that moment on Facebook where some guy from Chicago said he sucked.
And boy was he wrong. Boy was he wrong.
He was way wrong on that one.
Good old lariats and light beers. Old Mancer can't be put down, that's for sure. He cracks me up. Like I said, I give him crap sometimes. He freaks me out a little bit, but he is one hell of a wrestler. Can't deny that. Cannot deny that.
Yep.
But, we've been talking a lot about how, how all these, like, a lot of these what-if scenarios, like, if they hadn't, stepped back, or, if they hadn't done this, or so-and-so. But another what-if, do you ever think about if you had ever gotten that break? Like, if you had ever been able to step up to the bigger stage and what could have happened?
A little bit. So, like, I met me and Trip Cassidy. Out of all my students, Trip is probably the one I talk to the most. We usually text definitely at least once a week. And so, like, when the Cruiserweight Classic was going on, I know he messaged me and he's like, hey, if this was 10 years ago and it was 2007, you'd be in this tournament. So, it's stuff like that I do kind of think about, but it is what it is. And, I'm definitely not in shape anymore to ever even think about doing any of that stuff. So it's okay. And I live vicariously through my students. I'm more than pleased and honored, and I can't thank her enough that when Ruby Riott comes out, she is billed from Lafayette, Indiana, and she does that in tribute to me. So kind of when Ruby comes out, that's kind of me coming out, So, that's good enough for me. I get to watch them in my own house, and they're the ones that get to take the beating. So
that's right. So, I mean, we've talked so much about your career, and I mean, I think the word illustrious. You've done so much. I mean, we look at your resume. I mean, it's a mile long with all the people that you've been in the ring with. We look at the people that you've helped train, and again, it's a little less than a mile long, but it's still impressive. And one of the things I always ask people, especially people who've kind of been around the block, is what do you hope people think of you when they think of your career? Like, if someone says or thinks of Billy Rock, what do you hope that they remember about
you? Good question. I guess I just hope they were, I hope they were mildly entertained. I mean, I hope they know that, here's a guy that's 5'5". When I first started with Ian Billy Stone Jr., I was 5'5". I weighed 140 pounds. In 2001, that was really small. Like Rey Mysterio, people don't understand. Rey Mysterio was like really the one that for wrestlers. But and I'm thinking I'm slightly bigger than he is, but I'm still very small. And so I hope they realize that here's a guy that grew up in gravel roads of Lafayette, Indiana. He's 5'5". He's 140 pounds. And he figured out a way to do some pretty cool things in pro wrestling. And so, I talked about like Ruby Riott coming out to wrestling in that our small little warehouse to now wrestling in front of thousands of people on Tuesday nights. I remember like me, like I said, growing up in the gravel roads of Lafayette. Bouncing around from wrestling schools, trying to get noticed, and these places, and then wrestling in the ECW arena, where that was the place. ECW was one of the things that got me back into wrestling. I think about moments like that, and I just hope they appreciate the hard work that I put into it.
Absolutely. And honestly, if they don't, they just don't have they don't have a clue. They need to smarten up real quick. That's all I gotta say. But Billy, it's been an absolute honor. It's been a pleasure getting to talk to you, getting to listen to your wisdom, getting to hear a lot about your how it worked when you were starting out, and how it was getting to train and start school. I mean, you don't talk to a whole lot of people who have done as much as that. You don't hear people who were a wrestler who became a trainer. So it's really been amazing to hear this. But before I let you go today, do you have any social media where fans can follow you and just kind of keep up with you?
Yeah, I just have Facebook and Twitter. You can look me up as Billy Rock. Even though I quit wrestling, I still keep my Facebook page under my worker name. And you can find Twitter, which is SOR Billy. Yeah, you can find me at those places. And I don't wrestle, I don't train anymore. But if any wrestlers out there are listening to this, if you want to send me a match and want me to critique it, I have no problems doing that. Even though my students will tell you I do take forever to get back with you on that. Don't take offense to it.
That's what's up. Well, you guys heard it here. Keep up with him, because even though he's not wrestling anymore, he's still got a lot to do. He's still got quite a bit of information left to impart. So that's it. Information. It's the greatest thing you can give. But Billy, again, thank you so much for coming on here, talking to me. Just tell me your life story. I mean, it's honestly been a pleasure. Like I said, I've been waiting to talk to you because I've heard so much about you, and I can definitely say you definitely live up to the hype.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me on the show.
Come crack open a cold one and let Old Manser tell you a story.
King of Big Dog Style, Laird's and Light Beer, the king of the trailer court, your favorite wrestler of mine, me.
This is Warner's Wisdom with Mance Warner.
All right, people, red light on. Here we go. Another edition. Old Manser right here. Let me get into it real quick now. Gotta get this intro on here. All right, this is the best part of the Dave Dynasty Show. Old Manser, king of Big Dog Style, Laird's and Light Beer, the master of the pop-up headbutt, knee pad up, knee pad down, Laird's and Light Beer, the Southern Psycho, Big Doggy Cool, king of the trailer court, dramatic pause, wackadoo. Old Manser right here, another edition of Old Manser's Warner Wisdom right here on the Dave Dynasty Show. Like I said earlier, the best part of the Dave Dynasty Show. All right, let me get into it. I'm Old Manser, a busy man. I got to go out here while I got this free time. Drop a little knowledge. Y'all can choose if you're going to listen to it or not. That's on you. Don't put that on Old Manser. Now, this past weekend, Old Manser, Thursday night, IWA Mid-South, me and Anthony Henry had what some people are calling the match of the year, strong style matchup since best one going since 1996. Hell of a contest, baby. That was on Thursday night. Friday night, Old Messer headed on over to Black Label Pro Wrestling. Great show out there. Saturday back to IWA. Now, this is one of those episodes here where the knowledge, you could choose to take it. You can take it, you can keep it, you can leave it on the table, whatever it is. Old Messer gonna put it out there. You can take it, leave it. It don't matter, Old Messer. Now, let me set this knowledge up right here. Old Messer pulled up in my beautiful truck out there to Black Label Pro Wrestling out in Crown Point, Indiana. Old Messer gets out. Had to put on a couple layers. It was getting kind of cold that night. You know, I was wearing one of my beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Larrett's and Light Beer t-shirts that you can find for yourself over at ProWrestlingTee.com. See, that's called a little transition there, people. No, okay. Let me get back to the story here. Old Messer is waiting to get into my ring, wear my beautiful jacket made by David Lopan with my beautiful boots into my pro wrestling ring and put the boots to somebody, right? Now, earlier in the night, there was a matchup, and there were a couple vampires in the matchup. Gangrel and Kevin Thorne were in a tag team extravaganza matchup, baby. What occurred in this matchup is some garlic powder was thrown at Gangrel and Kevin Thorne, correct? Perfect. Garlic powder threw right at them, right? Like, you know, you watch a vampire movie. Let's say you watch The Lost Boys. They use garlic and some holy water to take down the vampires, man. The vampires. Now, what happens is Old Messer heads out to the ring later on in the night. Old Messer steps in the ring, into my ring, in a scramble matchup. During this matchup, Old Messer flops down in the middle of the ring. I got hit with a big, beautiful drop kick by old Matt Nix. He popped me right in the head. I go down, and I was completely blinded. Because Old Messer rolled into the garlic powder that was still in the ring. The garlic powder done blinded Old Messer. But see, here's the thing. Old Messer was trained by the greats, baby. I don't need my vision to get a W hit the pay window. So Old Messer hopped up. I got funky. I started hitting big boots. Hit a pop-up headbutt. Hit a big lariat. And I got the W. I got the 1, 2, 3 out there at Black Label Pro. Old Messer debuted Black Label Pro. Pop-up headbutt. Big lariat. Got the W. Hit the pay window. Got my light beers. Threw my lariats. Made it to the next town. But then I got Old Messer thinking. I've done a lot of battle with vampires throughout my time, right? But I never ever thought, what if myself, if Old Messer himself is a vampire and I just don't know, right? Kind of like Blade. Well, I guess Blade knew he was a vampire, but you know what I mean, right, people? I'm just going to leave it right there. My wisdom is very, very simple. Always know your surroundings, because there may be garlic powder down there and it may get in your eyeball and you go blind, right? My other wisdom, go get a test done. Find someone that knows voodoo and that could distinctly let you know if you're a vampire or not. Get that done very quickly too. My knowledge number 3 is getting kind of cold out, so you need to go down there and get yourself an Old Messer Larrett's and Light Beer t-shirt while you can on ProWrestlingTee.com. And Old Messer got some beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Christmas themed t-shirts coming out as well. I'll have them coming up in the Christmas season. 'Tis the season to spend some money and buy some beautiful t-shirts, people. Old Messer going to have them light beers. I'm going to hit the road, do what I do. I will see y'all next week. Try to have a good week. Won't be as good as Old Messer's, but who is? Who can be? There's only one Old Messer, baby. Now, be safe. Don't fall no garlic powder. Make sure you ain't a vampire unless you got like a Blade situation going on and maybe you're a vampire you don't know or you do know, one of those two. It is what it is. Old Messer, look at me. Hey, Old Messer gonna get out of here, people. See y'all next time.
Hey, Dave Dynasty here for the Tommy Wildfire Rich School of Wrestling in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. You know, I've spent years in the wrestling business, from wrestler to promoter, and now as host of the Dave Dynasty Show. And I know that solid training from an experienced instructor is mandatory, and that is what you'll get at the Tommy Wildfire Rich School of Wrestling. Not only instruction from former NWA World Heavyweight Champion Tommy Wildfire Rich, but many other big-name wrestlers, managers, and referees that will come in as guests. The Tommy Rich School of Wrestling will provide in-ring training and personal character training with all practices recorded on high-definition cameras. They have over 2 tons of weightlifting equipment, tanning beds. It's all in an indoor sports facility that will host monthly wrestling events that will bring in big names to ensure that you, as a beginning student, can get seen. This school has it all. For anyone interested in proper training, contact the Tommy Wildfire Rich School of Wrestling at 843-691-9205, and you will immediately be on your way to a profession in the wrestling business. Once again, call the Tommy Wildfire Rich School of Wrestling in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina at 843-691-9205. And welcome back to the Dave Dynasty Show. This is Dave Dynasty. Special thanks to Billy Rock for coming on for that great interview and telling his story today. Of course, thanks to old Mance Warner for giving us a little wisdom. Always a good thing to hear from old Mance. We didn't do it in the opening. Let's do it now. There's not a lot of news. I'm not really going to cover a lot of news. I wanted to talk about the bullying thing, so we're not anything real super major in the Midwest. The WWE rolling through today. As I record this and release this, as I release it, not recorded, they're like, I think the SmackDown cruise in Terre Haute and whatever else, so, blah, you know all that, but, yeah, so just get out there, support a local show. We say every week, you can check out Rockstar Pro Wrestling every Wednesday in Dayton, Ohio, Ohio Valley Wrestling every Wednesday in Louisville, Kentucky, IPW Mid-South every Thursday and Saturday in Memphis, Indiana, and WCWO every Friday night in Indianapolis, Indiana. Also, make sure you get out there and check out any promotion in your area. There's many more that hold semi-regular or monthly shows all over the state, all over the Midwest. Get out there, even if you're not in the Midwest and you're listening from some other part of the country. Get out there and support the indie groups in your area. And while you're out there in the cyber world, on the old intranet, as Manser likes to say, make sure you check out DaveDynasty.com. You can find links to all of our social media there, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and make sure you follow us on YouTube. Not only can you hear all the weekly podcasts we release, you can hear exclusive audio clips, other features, and classic wrestling that I post up there from the Midwest, particularly the World Wrestling Association. So make sure you check that out. Lots of good things there. If you're going to do any shopping on Amazon.com or HighSpots.com, make sure you go to DaveDynasty.com, click on those banners for our affiliate links. No additional charge for you, but we get a little kickback. We appreciate that support. And speaking of support, you can support the show directly by clicking on our banner and going to Pro Wrestling Tees, buying one of our T-shirts, or click on the Patreon link and make an ongoing monthly contribution to help keep this show free and running smoothly. If you are a monthly regular contributor, you will get some unique, exclusive audio content, some messages from me, and many other things. The Patreon link right there on the DaveDynasty.com. Click on that to make an ongoing contribution. Or you can go to paypal.me/TheDaveDynasty to make a one-time financial donation. A few of you have done that. We certainly appreciate that. As you're giving gifts and in the season of giving, give old Dave a little financial support to help keep the Dave Dynasty Show free. We are here, the world's most dangerous podcast. We are here supporting the Midwest, keeping the old Midwest Express rolling, and that's the way we like it. We are supporting Midwest Pro Wrestling, past, present, and future. And as you should too, get out there this weekend, see a show in your area, and make sure you tell the whole world about the Dave Dynasty Show. Tell them to listen. Tell them what they're missing. If you listen on iTunes, please go give us a rate and review. We appreciate that. And until next week, where we will have guest Fred Curry Jr. That's right, Fred Curry Jr. Do you understand that family lineage there? Wild Bull Curry's grandson. Flying Fred Curry's son. Flying Fred Curry's son. We have Fred Curry Jr. on next week. Going to be amazing. You want to hear this interview as he talks about his family and his career. Until that time, be safe, be good, be independent, and keep on growing.